Well, it's officially afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Phantom Tollbooth Cornerstone 2008 press tent. Joining us this afternoon, at least currently, and I'll tell you what, soon to join us will be Cornerstone's own John Herron. He's the director of Cornerstone and also the drummer of the Resurrection Band. Professor J. Robert Parks is also with us, as well as EMI's John Thompson. HM from HM Magazine, Doug Van Pelt, and representing the Phantom Tollbooth today is Tony Daddy LaFianza. They're here to talk about Cornerstone's place on the scene, past, present, and future. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, Dan, for that introduction. And we're going to talk about Cornerstone, our favorite subject today. A little bit past, present, and future, so we'll take that as an outline, past, present, and then the future. First, I want everybody to introduce themselves, tell us why you're here, and then answer a question for me. So, Doug, why are you here, and who was the very first band to ever play Cornerstone stage?
Well, this is my 22nd year straight time at Cornerstone. I am here because I love being here. I would be here if I didn't have an official role, just because it's a great time to experience community, love and fellowship, and fantastic music. The first band that played Cornerstone Festival ever, I'm going to take a shot and just throw out a band that was at the first one, but they probably weren't the first band. Weber and the Buzztones. Steve Taylor.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I know.
John, I know you know everything about Cornerstone.
I do.
I'm going to try to stump you in a second.
Go for it.
Wasn't the youth choir
Yes.
the first band to ever play Cornerstone
Youth
stage?
choir was the first.
Jay
Later
Robert.
known as the choir.
Right.
They started at 2:00 p.m. on the indoor stage. I was 13 years old. I hadn't quite turned 14 yet. My 14th birthday was 4 days later. I've been at every Cornerstone, unlike the newcomers like Doug. I've been at all 25, and I don't know if there's too many other non-Japusa people that can say that. And I'm here with, I do work full-time with EMI Publishing, but I also have a company called Gyroscope Arts, and we manage all the sponsorships for Cornerstone. So we help with all the ads on the video screen and all the announcements down there, as well as various other sponsorship-related things here at the festival. And I was actually on staff with Cornerstone for several years, doing that for them as an employee. So this year, with EMI, Worship Together is sponsoring the big event tonight, the big 25th anniversary event. We've got seminars we're doing and leading worship a couple times. My band has played, will have played 5 times by the time the festival's over. I did a couple seminars, and then I'm helping out doing, I also host the HM podcast, and Gyroscope helps HM Magazine with advertising as well. So I'm here for lots and lots of reasons.
You're a very busy man.
I'm extremely busy at Cornerstone, and I miss the days of being able to go to shows and stay up all night.
Well, I have a question for you then about a show, as a matter of fact.
All right.
So can you tell me what band, as far as I know, the only band ever to have pizza delivered in the middle of their set?
Vengeance.
Wrong. You were stumped.
Was it One Bed
Does
Pig?
Doug know the answer to this?
Or was it Lust Control?
That was Lust Control.
Oh, that's right.
I called in the order.
I was there.
And I tossed the pizza out.
I remember that. I was there.
How
You're
quickly
right.
we forget.
As Vengeance, One Bed Pig, and Lust Control were the 3 things that came to mind.
Pizza guy came right down the middle of the audience and delivered
Yep.
pizza right
Who
to
can
the
name who
stage.
the pizza guy was? Caesar Kalinowski.
Oh,
And
Little
10
Caesar.
seconds.
Yeah.
Jay Robert, why are you here? What's your name? And what is the... Jay Robert, what is your name? And
I was gonna say that's an easy one. I think I can handle that one.
what is the greatest rock and roll documentary ever? What is the greatest documentary about Cornerstone?
Cornerstone Festival documentary that I made. Of course, that's the greatest one.
Yeah. No, it is a nice one. Okay, I'm the baby of the group. I've been coming to Cornerstone since 1989. I've missed a couple of years since then, but pretty much every year since for the last 20 years. My experience is a little bit different because I no longer really have anything to do with Christian music or the music industry. I did for a long time, but over the last 10 years I've moved into film, and I'm a film critic in Chicago, and I'm also a professor at Columbia College. I'm here this year as a seminar speaker, but I come pretty much every year just to experience the community, to see old friends, to see a few concerts, and to see lots of movies and to talk with people about movies. The greatest rock documentary ever, I think, is The Last Waltz by Martin Scorsese, which is just a really fantastic film. The greatest Cornerstone documentary, besides John's, of course, which isn't really fine, is Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music, which was made by a couple of ladies from Chicago, actually, and they presented their film here at Cornerstone a few years ago. And they're not Christians, but they really, I think, captured what Cornerstone is about, and I love that movie. So.
I hated that one, but I liked the attempt.
Let's talk about Cornerstone Past. Started in '84. John, why was Cornerstone put together by Jabusa?
Res Band was the traveling music ministry of Jesus People. Is actually, part of the bone marrow of Jesus People. It wasn't like, oh, we'll just start a community and then, oh, a band would be a good idea. It was part of it. And as a result, they had spent years at that point, a decade or so, touring and doing festivals. There's kind of two things that happened. One was that one of the guys who was part of the early Jesus People community went with a group to England while the others went to Florida with Res Band. That guy's name was Henry Wong, and he helped start the Greenbelt Festival over in England and was part of the branch of the community that spawned that. So he had some experience with that, and Greenbelt is still going. As far as I know, it's a great event, and Res Band would travel over and play at Greenbelt. But then in the States, they would travel around and play things like Creation, other big mainstream Christian festivals, where there would be one tent off to the side for the kids, and it would be like maybe the size of this with a kind of a rinky-dink PA, while the big stage had all the mainstream Christian music. And they just felt like there was a whole generation of people being left out. There was a whole cultural aesthetic to the Christian festival scene at that point in the early 80s that was not as radical and empowering as it had been in the Explo 72, big Christian festival in Dallas, the early Jesus festivals with artists like Keith Green and Love Song and people like that. They had this idea of taking what they saw Henry and those folks did with Greenbelt and bringing it to the States and setting up a festival where the crazy weird stuff was the main stage. And so eventually they said, well, let's just see what happens. And by 1984 they started it, and they didn't know what to expect, but it got some traction, and here we are 25 years later.
J. Robert, what attracted you to your first Cornerstone?
I was living in Boston at the time, and Boston was just a wasteland for Christian music. There was a guy named Dan Russell who now does some things with U2, and Dan was
Hey, John Herron,
so.
Come on up here, man. You're supposed to be up here.
And that's okay. And so, but we kept hearing about this festival out in the Midwest, and so some friends and I got together, and we actually drove 20 hours out to Chicago, and where it was being held at the time. And for me, originally, it was just the music. It was a chance to see people like the 77s, a chance to see people like Charlie Peacock, a chance to see people like Adam again that just were never coming within hours of New England. But then over the years, what's drawn me back to Cornerstone, even though I'm not as much into music as I used to be, is Cornerstone is the place where I feel at home. I tell people back in Chicago that it's the one place in my life where I don't have to translate. In my church, I always feel like I have to sort of translate part of my life. And with a lot of my non-Christian friends, both in where I work as well as just in my neighborhood, I have to translate my faith part of my life. But when I come to Cornerstone, I no longer have to translate. And that's what's kept me coming back for 20 years.
Hey, let's say hello to John Herron. John is the director of Cornerstone Festival and has been for many years. What is the biggest year, and how many people came that year?
Ask me something else. Let's see. Well, I would imagine the biggest year was probably 2001, before 9/11. It's the truth. I think that after 9/11, the economy kind of soured. Flights were tough for a while. People stayed home, and we've never seen this big a crowd. Now, I don't know how big it was at that point. Probably about 5,000 people more than what you see here today. And we've probably been about the same as we are now for probably about the last 5 years.
There's more festivals now that are reaching this community than there were prior to '01. It seems like after '01 there was there was Purple Door before that, but other than that there wasn't. Now there's more regional events, so it's still nothing that compares to Cornerstone, but it does pull, a little bit from the fringes.
Well, yeah, I think you're right, John. The truth is, it's funny, I meet together often with all the guys who organize most of your major Christian festivals, and I almost feel like I'm a baseball fan, and I've always felt like the baseball owners are kind of like their worst enemies because there's no salary cap, and they compete with one another to the point that they kind of kill each other off. And in some ways, the festivals have been almost too successful because now there are so many, and of course, the term festival is used pretty loosely nowadays. So, if a church has 4 bands in their backyard, they promote it as a festival, which I don't fault them for that, but obviously it's a little even hard for sometimes people to differentiate what is a multi-day camping event. But you're right, there were so many events. Back when we started in '84, there was probably, maybe 4 or 5 Christian festivals in my definition of festival across the country. Now today, there are so many that it really has. I think that and rising energy costs are going to draw all these festivals into a little more regional and not quite as much national appeal, which is a little bit sad for me. But I got to tell you, I don't know how much, as I've walked around here the last 3 days, I continually meet people from Texas, Florida, South Carolina, New York. So apparently, even with the high cost of gas, there's folks coming, and so I'm blessed by that.
I just want to sort of speak to that. Obviously, I would not drive from Chicago, but and I think we would all agree with this, that there's something specifically different about Cornerstone as a festival. Yeah, there's lots of festivals around the country, and I'm glad for that, because not everyone can come all the way to work from wherever they are. But I continue to come to Cornerstone, not just for the bands, which, yeah, you can see in various festivals, but you've got, this really great film festival called Flickerings. You've got just seminars on all sorts of different topics. And again, that's not for everyone, but it is for some people. And it provides that sense of community. It provides a sense of a conversation and a dialogue that I think is just tremendously exciting. And so for me, yeah, there are lots of festivals, but Cornerstone is unique, at least in my experience.
I think we need people to be singing that song, because when you're looking at a print ad in a magazine, you can't tell that. That's why we started doing the DVDs and all that stuff, to try and give people a bigger picture. We need the fans to be telling their friends, no, there is a quantitative and qualitative difference when you make the trip to Cornerstone, because there are more and more of these alternative type stages at mainstream festivals, as well as, like John was saying, 1-day events, 2-day events, non-camping, not really much seminars. And when they're looking at it just in print, it's that intangible thing that still sets Cornerstone apart. And we condensed everybody we could from Nashville into one big van this time to cut down on gas costs. But yeah, I think that there will still be a draw nationally and internationally. But that's kind of why I think the crowd has leveled a little bit. I do think that Cornerstone's impact, though, is bigger than it's ever been. There's more people around the world paying attention to the website, to the bands that are coming out of here. So the impact is much, much bigger than the size of the crowd on the ground here would indicate.
John, what's the most successful change you've ever made to Cornerstone?
Well, I would have to say purchasing this campground and moving it out here. We ran the event, for 7 years outside of north of Chicago at Lake County Fairgrounds. We may have stayed there to this very day if it had not been for, things outside of our control. The area began to have a lot more development in it, and eventually the little town about a mile away, Grace Lake, annexed that entire area, and it fell within the city limits. And along with that came a 7 o'clock sounds curfew, which obviously wasn't going to work for Cornerstone. Now we were pretty convinced at that time that the event was really, that it'd be a mistake to move it too far away from Chicago. Somehow or another, we felt, there's millions of people here. We need this to draw from. But actually, prior to that, about a year before that, even the thought of moving the event, Henry Wong, who was the director of the event at the time, and myself went down to Nashville with some kind of a collection of pastors and business music people and just some businessmen who weren't necessarily in it. And we went down there on the invite of a man I know who runs a book company, a publishing house, and he invited us to come down and like a little think tank and bring all of our information and just something kind of outside of our norm. We're not very corporate guys. We're pretty homegrown. So we went down there and met with all these guys. Most of them I didn't really know. And we just laid out our past 4 or 5 years we've done this event and what we're doing and our promotional material and our vision, and just said, what kind of advice do you got for us? And it was interesting. The only real advice we got was you should move the event out of Chicago and put it in a rural area. And I remember thinking, gee, that was a stinking waste of time. That's the last thing we're gonna do is move it out in the countryside somewhere. And it was only about a year later that we were forced to look for a new location, and I began to think about this advice. And we moved it here. And the truth is, it made a lot of sense for us. And to this day, I've shared that information with many people that have come to me over the years saying they want to start a festival. I usually tell them, well, don't do that, just come to Cornerstone. But if you have to do it, this is one element. I think that people don't want to camp in the middle of a city. Who's going to camp in Chicago? You got to get out somewhere. There's almost more sense of making it a destination, a multi-day, a road trip. You can't just pick and choose. And if you're at home, you think, well, I'll go if the weather ain't bad, or maybe I'll see this band. But now you have to make a commitment. Pretty much, we're out here. We're really too far for a day crowd from Chicago, 225 miles away. And so we made that move out here. We found this property. It was interesting because we were looking around at other county fairgrounds within the Chicago area originally. And then a friend of mine brought me in the back of the Chicago Tribune where there's those pages of those little tiny ads that I think nobody ever reads. And there's one little section called like recreational and farm acreage or something, and has these properties listed under it. And it was a little line that basically said a 600-acre campground, 125-acre lake, and a little phone number. And I didn't even know what state it was in. So we thought, well, what the heck? I don't know. I was called up and said, hey, what's up with this campground? And it was this place. Turned out it was perfect for us. We drove out here, saw the place, just fell in love with it. Some bank had loaned a man, a neighborhood man, really in this area, to develop this campground. I'm not sure exactly what he was hoping to do, but nice guy. He's passed away now, but I met him before he did. And he developed this campground, put in a lot of the roads, the well system, a lot of the lake, the dam. Of course, it was probably kind of ill-advised because I don't think the farmers around here wanted to come out here and camp. And it went bankrupt, and they sold it twice to different campground associations who also ended up losing it back to the bank. So the bank was fairly desperate to sell the place. So by the time we got a hold of them, they said, well, there's only one small problem. We actually already just sold it a couple of days ago, but I'll give your phone number. We're like, okay. And sure enough, 6 weeks later, they called us back up and said, you know what, the deal fell through. They couldn't pull it off, and are you still interested? We had actually that year already gone ahead, because now it's getting near the end of the year. This must have been, what, 1990, I guess? And we had actually been given the grace by Grace Lake, who controlled that Lake County's fairground, that we could have one more year of Cornerstone there and be exempt at the 7 o'clock sound curfew. But when we came down here, we saw the place, and then they called us back, and we went ahead and bought it. We closed on it like December 28th, and we just switched streams. We just changed all our promo and said, that's it, we're coming here instead. And I think that was probably the biggest change we ever did. That to me, it was so perfect out here. I mean, the one hard part of being out here, and most of y'all won't have to experience this, is that it's a lot of property to clean up. And after the event, it's a little depressing for about 2 days to walk around and, you know, think. I almost think every year that we're not going to get it cleaned up again, but we do. Eventually, we get it cleaned up and it's there. But I think that's probably been our most significant kind of element, was adding this place that enabled us to spread out, to do what we want to do, to add sports, add different elements of the event, and not be under, you know, the one problem almost any of these events face when you rent a property like a county fairgrounds, you get about 2 days to set up and about 2 days to tear down. So you're fairly limited by what you can do. I mean, the nice side of a fairground was there was a fair amount of permanent structure, and out here we have very little, and we just use tents. But we got, you know, 360 days a year to set up, and so, you know, we can kind of do what we want. So I would have to count that as probably the most significant.
The only thing that goes on here is Cornerstone, right?
Technically, yeah. You know, really the property is owned by the Jesus People community, and so a lot of members of our community, you know, come down here on the weekends. It's just close enough you can leave Friday night, get down here, spend Saturday and Sunday with your family. So actually, year-round, but you're right, there's no other events that take place here. You know, a couple of Boy Scout troops come out here and camp, and, you know, just friends of ours. But yeah, mostly we have the property for the sole purpose.
Doug, what big changes have you seen over the years?
Musically speaking, big changes have been the infiltration of hard music and metal and hardcore. As you see that, you know, what's on the main stage nowadays is a lot of the bands that we cover, and it's probably been the most significant change is you know, the more mainstream bands like the Garmo and Key and Res Band and Petra and Mylon Lefevre, they don't monopolize the main stage anymore. It's all the crazy, wild, loud music that's all over the place.
What stage is Mylon playing? I missed that.
Mylon Lefevre, he played the main stage.
Was he?
here.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I remember Barren Cross though, and Undercover. I mean, there was always a lot of hard music. I thought it's just that hard music's gotten so much harder.
Yeah, and Cornerstone's opened its arms to embrace it too, which has been great.
Yeah, there's really no other fest that puts that kind of music on their main stage, I don't think.
I think that
Probably not Christian events anyway. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, I think that the generator stage thing is, I remember in '89 was when I started a company called True Tunes, and I went to Henry after the first day, and we were basically selling records in the tent, but we gave all the money to Japusa. We just kept 10% to cover our costs, but it was, I mean, I don't want to sound too magnanimous because that's how I launched my company, you know, so it was very strategic as well as charitable, I guess. But the first day I went to Henry and we told him what our sales were, and the first day it was bigger than they'd ever done before in the whole event. And I said, now I got a favor. I wonder if I could set up my band over there by the little pig stage and play. And he said, man, you can do whatever you want. You know, so we brought a PA and we set up in front of a sign that said swine. And we played at 2 in the afternoon, and friends of ours from our church played after us. And the next day a band used our PA and did it. They were called the Throws. They got a record deal that day. Yeah, go Throws.
Was that in Grace Lake?
That was up in Grays Lake. And so then Henry said, man, that was kind of cool. We had a couple hundred people standing around watching us play. He's like, maybe next year we could actually have a little impromptu stage. So we kind of helped, True Tunes kind of helped put together and get the word out about this impromptu stage. But then it just, you know, the impromptu stage was the generator stage for probably the next 7 or 10 years. And then it was more and more, you know, there was like 1 or 2 people, and it was a big deal that somebody was smart enough to bring a generator and run a PA at their campsite. And now that whole road there is just hysterical. It's like this whole alternate universe of Cornerstone with one kind of music. You know, it's like chainsaws, you know, the whole way down the road.
You know, there's a little bit of order to our madness, but you're right. You know, and probably some of this has to do with the fact that I've raised 3 kids here at Cornerstone. They're all grown now and married, and I actually have 3 grandbabies. But my own kids growing up also played in little bands, and probably none of their bands had the potential to be their life work, but they were just fun. They wanted to participate. And the more and more we saw that through these, like John was talking about, the impromptu stage, there would be maybe 250 bands a day that would throw their name in that hat for those 10, 12, 15 slots that day. And we began to think, you know, there's obviously a lot of young bands here, and they really want a chance to share their music. They don't just want to sit around and watch somebody else. So yeah, as this germ, this seed grew with the idea of generator stages, this is the first year that we really kind of took it out of the closet. Now it's been a well-known kind of underground secret that you could run your own generator stage here, but up to this point, we pretty much ignored it. We didn't advertise it. Last year, right before the fest, we actually listed a few of them on our website, and that was our first move. And even now, I'm really not interested in managing all these little stages. I really want to keep as much distance from them as we can. But this year, there are so many of them, and the truth is most generator stages charge a small fee. And originally I had told them, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. If you're gonna do it, you just gotta do it for free. But I couldn't stop that tide. And the more I got to talk to them all, I realized nobody was making money at it. They were all lucky to even come close to covering their cost. But not all generator stages, as you can see, are created equal there. I mean, some of them have full tents, sound stages, production lights. Some of them are just, you know, some kids sitting in front of their van on the grass. But again, so this year, kind of for the sake of the bands, like a buyer beware, we decided to go ahead and let the generator stages pre-register for the first time. So it's the first time we've really actually talked about it openly ahead of time, that there are generator stages. You can play at generator stages. You can run your own generator stage, and we encouraged everybody. It wasn't, you didn't have to do it, but we encouraged everybody to pre-register their stage. And in doing that, we were also able to gather information. They had to fill out a form, and then we posted it like a graph on the, which you could see, did they have a stage? What was the set length? What was their setup times? Were they gonna be in a tent? And what the fee was gonna be. So if a band thought they wanted to play at a generator stage, they could pull up our website, and I think there were 43 of them that registered, and kind of shop, for no better word, you know, to see who's doing what. And so again, without us getting into the managing them, and I really hope not to do so, we were able to shed a little light on it, maybe bring a little more organization to it. And then just in the last minute this year, because there were so many that pre-registered, we still had never promised them a reserved spot. It was the land rush. You had to line up early at the gate, rush in and try to grab a piece of real estate. The challenge of that, of course, is that we limited them to this one area. So of course, if you got in late, it might not work, and you might have 50 bands thinking they're going to play at your generator stage. You may have collected 50 bucks from each of them, and then all of a sudden they get here, and boom, you can't even find a spot to set up. So we realized that could be a problem. So this year we went ahead, before we opened the gates, just 2 days before we opened the gates, we actually pretty much blanketed that entire row right there where you see them all with pre-reserved sites. Now they weren't assigned to anybody, but we sent mass emails out to everybody who had pre-registered their generator stages saying, little change of plans, when you come in, go find an empty spot, get somebody to grab it, pull that piece of paper off, and bring it to the fest office and register it. And it brought a little more organization to the process. But we still don't charge, we don't charge any fees to somebody who wants to run their own generator stage. On the other side, it does help sell tickets. Everybody involved has to buy a ticket. The bands, the sound company, whatever, you're just an attendee of the event, but you're gonna have a chance to hopefully participate and enjoy yourself in that way. So, yeah, as far as I know, I don't know if anybody else does that. And maybe there's good reasons why they don't do it, and we're just too darn dumb to know it. But anyway, so far, I love it. To me, it's one of the really fun parts of the event.
I think it's revolutionary, and I think it's a brilliant idea. There's still a question mark on how it's going to turn out, but I think it's really good. You're giving autonomy to all these they're like little club owners. You just created an entertainment district over there.
Chainsaw Alley.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Doug, if you thought it would change the industry or at least the fests.
Well, it's like a minor league baseball league. You're giving people a chance and a platform to develop their talent. And there's some really good bands out there, and if you're not playing death metal, chainsaw rock, you really stand out from the crowd. I saw a band called Dear Future was playing melodic rock there, and Kiros was playing there yesterday. Sounded great. But it reminds me of Austin, Texas. Like, on a given night, you can just club hop and bounce around. If you don't like what you're hearing here, just walk across the street here and over there. By the end of the night, you can see some really good tunes.
And the other thing about them is that all these bands, are from MySpace or whatever. They got their own fans. They have 1,000 people writing to Cornerstone, and
Well, one other thing we did this year, and again, this is just kind of inside information. For the first time this year, we allowed people to be ticket affiliates, and all these people who ran these generator stages were also could register as ticket affiliates, and they could sell their tickets to those bands that are playing on their stage cheaper than what you could buy them from Cornerstone. And the actual generator stage gets a commission. They get a little kickback. So and part of the reason in that was it was twofold. Of course, we were hoping to sell tickets, and also we were hoping to avoid some confusion. There would every day there would be bands showing up at the front gate saying, "Oh, I'm playing at the the Phoenix stage," and they thought they were getting in free. And we're like, well, no, sorry, that's not really an official stage, it's just a generator stage. It literally daily, people would show up, and obviously there was a communication breakdown between the people running the generator stage and really passing on to the bands coming that, you're just attending the event. You gotta buy a ticket like everybody else. This is just one small part of the event. Hopefully it's just for fun. Nobody's looking at it as a big career move. And so in giving the generator stages the ability to be ticket affiliates, we also gave them some incentive to make sure that they passed that information on to those bands, and they understood that, hey, not only do you have to buy tickets, but if you buy them from me, I can sell them to you cheaper than you can even get them from Cornerstone, and you'll help fund the stage. And we did that. It was a new program, a new part of the ticketing. It was pretty successful. I think I think it's going to grow. And to be honest with you, we actually did it with the bands themselves. All the regular bands that we booked at Cornerstone, we offered all of them, if they would like, that they could be ticket affiliates, and that they could sell tickets to Cornerstone on their own MySpace or whatever, and they would actually get, they actually received a 5% commission on all their sales. So I'm probably got to cut, a few $1,000s worth of checks here in the next day to our little ticket affiliates. But that was another way of trying to get the bands to partner with us. I've always been a little distressed by the idea that it was like a bad marriage somehow or another. As the festival books the bands with a booking agent, and everything is so rosy, and they're calling you and they're writing you and you're calling them, and as soon as you sign that contract, there tended to be some dynamic in there that almost turned it adversarial. Now all of a sudden it's like, demanding of, stage gear and setup times, and now you're dealing with a tour manager and he's uptight with you guys from the moment he shows up, and I'm like, how do we go from the honeymoon to the fighting here so darn quick? So one thing I really wanted to try to do this year, and I think we're gonna make a big push on it for 2009, is passing along a little bit of the sense of responsibility to the band that, hey, this is your show also, and we need you to become co-promoters with us. And we wanted to give them some incentive, and one of those incentives was to actually become a ticket affiliate and sell tickets for us in advance and as well. But also we actually added a person to our staff whose sole job is to talk with the bands on how can we partner with you to promote your show at Cornerstone, and kind of get rid of that conflict, which to me has always been a little bit of a mystery. I want the record label, I want the booking agent, I want the management, I want the band to all feel a sense of responsibility for, if they're going to be here at Cornerstone, that they also need to realize that they have some responsibility in promoting this show, and not just blowing in the door and blowing out the other side, and hopefully it worked or hopefully it didn't. I'm probably not as interested in working with bands who aren't invested in the success of the concert and the success of the event. So anyway, something new, something a little different we did this year.
Brilliant. And another reason why Cornerstone is so special and different, and it's a flagship. It's like, you know, years ahead of any other festival. Other festivals are going to start doing things like that. J. Robert, there's a lot more than music here. I was wondering if you'd talk about things you're involved in here.
For me, as I mentioned at the beginning, I started coming to Cornerstone just for the music, and I used to try to go to every single band as much as you could, and tried to stay up till 3 in the morning when midnight shows went till 3 in the morning. But then about, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, when the Imaginarium started, this little tent over back there behind the food tents, or food vendors, that was dedicated to thinking about film and TV and culture and pop culture and things like, you know, Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. That was really exciting for me because it came along at a time in my life when I was also interested in that. I'd gone to grad school, I'd kind of become really excited about film and thinking about what would a Christian approach to film be. And so I feel like my own intellectual development has sort of grown up with the Imaginarium. And then when Cornerstone added Flickerings, this kind of devoted film festival within the festival, you know, where people could submit short films and see them screened, and as well as we show films from literally all over the world that most people would never have a chance to see outside of major cities. And just to be part of that conversation has been really valuable for me personally, but it's also just been exciting to see, you know, people's eyes open up. You know, Wednesday night we showed this little Romanian film called 4 Months, 3 Weeks, and 2 Days, you know, which is it's a tough little movie, and yet there were probably, I don't know, 100 people there, and then about 40 of them stayed afterwards for the conversation, and it was a really rich discussion and conversation about that film, and then just about the human condition and about people, and that for me has become the real, personally, the draw of Cornerstone. And I love the fact, you know, thinking about the generator stages, it feels like it's all a part of this, that Cornerstone provides the avenue in which you can explore what's really interesting to you. And so for, you know, the generator guys, it gives them a chance to perform. It gives them a chance to sort of be at Cornerstone, and even if it's just 5 people watching, that's really exciting for them. But then for other people who are thinking about film, you know, after a seminar yesterday, I was talking with a guy who's going to film school in the fall, and he was so excited that he could come to Cornerstone and talk with other Christians about movies. And he said, you know, no one else I know at home talks about movies like this. And so that for me has been, you know, just the Cornerstone opens up avenues, and it's like, wow, no one's serving this community. Let's start something that sort of really reaches or gives interest to people who are interested in that.
I think the art was the same way.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, when I was a kid, I had a band technically like a week after Cornerstone 84 was over with, because I wanted to play at Cornerstone someday, you know. And having access is this thing that inspires people to get active. I think that the painting and the photography, and over the years, just having a place where you could come and do what you do creatively in a thriving artistic community of faith is not something most of us get to do all the time. And so it's been a real need that the festival has met, and it's blessed a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely.
If I could just add something to that, you know, the other night, Wednesday night, Mike Kurtenstein, who does a lot of the programming of the Imaginarium and Flickerings, he and I were just having dinner together, and we both had our Flickering shirts on, and on the back of the shirt it says, "So many subtitles, so little time." And it's kind of a fun little shirt. I wear it when I go around. People think it's cool. But these 3 guys sit down at the picnic table next to us. The guy's probably around 20 years old. And one guy sort of taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "What does your shirt mean?" And so I tried to explain, you know, it's kind of a pretentious little thing. And so I started asking what he was here for, and he was one of the generator bands, and he was really excited about that. But for me, the fun part of the next hour, and we talked for a while, was just this conversation. You know, me, a 40-year-old guy, these 3 20-year-old guys, they know very little about movies. I know very little about generator bands. And yet, there was a conversation there, and there was dialogue there, and it was really exciting. And I think for that sort of, that's what happens at Cornerstone. You have this sort of cross-cultural, you know, even within the body of Christ, this cross-cultural conversation that happens all the time. And that, for me, is what I love about Cornerstone.
Well, we all love Cornerstone. Starting here with Doug, and let's go down. Where do you want Cornerstone to go in the future? What would you like to see happen?
Wow. Well, I love the fact that Cornerstone celebrates diversity and it's providing, like we talked about, an opportunity to be creative. If I learned anything about being in a band for 6 years, it's that when you have a creative outlet, God seems to open up the window and give you creativity. It's like things start flowing when you have an outlet to exercise it. And so just continuing that and just thinking ahead, like this generator stage thing, like I said, I think is a brilliant move that who knows what that's going to lead to. But I think opening doors like that and checking out what's inside and just feeling around and experimenting is going to be the way to keep going. Seems like hard music is not going to slow down anytime soon, so that's looking rosy.
If we're talking pie in the sky, I wouldn't want to change anything culturally about the festival at all. But one of the reasons we work hard trying to find more and better and bigger sponsors is to generate more funds to help the festival. I would love it if the average age could edge up a little bit, and I think that when people get to a certain age, they just can't tolerate the dust and the lack of amenities, and so they retire from Cornerstone at about the age of 25, unless you're really crazy like some of us are. But it would be great if we could make enough funds that we could pave the roads and sort of improve the superstructure a little bit, not just to be comfortable for 4 days for my sake, because I can handle it, but I would love to see older Christians, people that are artists and photographers and filmmakers and musicians and that are in their 40s and 50s. I'd like to see that group increase for the exact reason he just said, the hanging out at the table. I love driving around in the golf cart because I'm always giving kids rides, and I get a few minutes to say, where are you from, why are you here, what do you do? And I'm 30, I'll be 38 Monday, and most of the people, I got a Mexican wrestler guy in my cart yesterday with the mask and the whole deal, and he's 18 years old and from I don't know where, but I think that there's a benefit to the body of Christ when we increase the diversity, and if we could kind of improve some of that stuff, which I know is just a matter of dollars. It'd be great to see some of the diversity I see at some of the bigger, more mainstream festivals. You see older people there, you see more parents coming with their teenagers and stuff, because it's not quite as third world as Cornerstone is. So that would be a dream I'd like to see. But I wouldn't want to change anything about the festival.
It's interesting we talk about infrastructure, because I think that, as I said earlier, probably one of the biggest blessings I felt was significant changes was being able to move out here. But the cost of maintaining the property was a real shock to us. It costs us about $300,000 a year to maintain the property, and we used to spend about $20,000 to rent that fairgrounds. So that's a 15-time increase in cost. And we have years that we have spent $50,000 just on gravel to put on the roads. We have like 4 tractors, 3 employees who mow the grass, a deep well system. Our electric bill here is, we pay over $60,000 a year for electrical, over $60,000 a year for insurance. So the cost of maintaining the property was an eye-opener, and then of course, as you were talking about these little smaller elements within them, and those smaller elements are really kind of subsidized if you really looked at it from a business point of view. Okay, there's 40 people over here who use this part of the festival. They probably represented about $4,000 in ticket sales, and yet that particular program cost $8,000 to put on. So it actually cost way more money to add that element than what it obviously is drawing. But we try to avoid, looking at any particular part of the event as like it's, we don't take attendance, whatever. But we do, but we are under the strain, like John said, of keeping the thing alive financially. We're under the blessing that we're really we're a nonprofit, a 501c3. We don't have salaries. All the people that are involved are full-time are volunteers, mostly part-time volunteers, a few full-time volunteers, such as myself, whose really living is supported and subsidized by Jesus People USA, not by Cornerstone Festival. So we tried to keep it as cheap as we can. We've looked at the idea. I mean, one time I got really close. We literally had a contractor come out here and thought about putting up pole barns. But when we got down and looked at it, it was going to run us about $600,000 or $700,000 to replace these biggest tents with pole barns. And we just couldn't make the numbers work. It just didn't make sense. You know, we spend about $45,000 a year on tents, and that debt service alone was going to be about that. But that was only going to cover the 10 biggest tents, not the other 25, 30 we rented. So it has been a little bit of a struggle to keep the infrastructure of the place up. Even the shower house, we took the old semi-trailers that we used to drag to Grace Lake every year, and we converted them to showers. We brought them out here, and we had to figure out a way because we have no city sewer out here. And it's been a challenge. It's pretty expensive to operate those showers. Now I've thought about, hey, I see other events that have these big fancy shower houses, and matter of fact, this year I took 2 bids on them, but they're like, for us to rent showers would be about $80,000 a year for us to put in a rented showers, and we probably can maintain that one for about $10,000 a year. So again, we try not. It's just it's just math, really. There's nobody making a dime profit off this event ever. Every single bit of money that comes in goes right back into the event. But it is just a big math problem sometimes, sitting down thinking, can we improve this area? And there's only 2 ways to do it. Either charge more money for tickets, which I hate to do, or cut something else out of the program. Because we've pretty much been operating right at ground zero for just years and years. Now, like John said, and I hope he's right, John works hard to manage our sponsorships. At this point, we don't have any major, there's no Coca-Cola right now, the 6-figure check or nothing. And I don't know how, we're not very corporate kind of guys. If I could confess to you, I don't even own a shirt with a button. I'm very casual. But anyway, those are some of the challenges we face here on the infrastructure of the property. It's just, what do we do? What makes sense? And can we afford it? And is it going to cost something else? Are we going to have to drop flick rings in order to have better showers? Are we going to have to, I'm loath to do any of that. So anyway, keep us in your prayers. I'd really appreciate that.
I guess I just say 2 things. One, again, sort of dreaming. I would love if Cornerstone were just much better known throughout both Christian culture and outside of Christian culture. I was sharing with someone just a couple weeks ago what my seminar topic is on this year, which is the very exciting topic of colonialism, empire, and myth. And a woman who, she'd grown up in the church, knew a little bit about Cornerstone, she looks at me, she goes, I didn't know Cornerstone did those kinds of seminars. And I think it would be just really fantastic. And I don't even know how this could possibly happen except through really great marketing and word of mouth. But if what's going on at Cornerstone in all of its facets was sort of more broadly known across culture, that would be really exciting for me. We've all said, I wouldn't really change anything about what's actually going on site. And one last thing I think would be great, and John mentioned this a bit, is a greater dialogue across generations. Going back to this conversation I had on Wednesday night, one of the things I asked the guides, I said, so do you know who Resurrection Band is? And sadly they didn't. And I said, you should do yourself a favor. And tomorrow night, Thursday night, last night, I said, go check out Resurrection Band at 6:30, because those guys paved the way so that you could do what you're doing today. And I firmly believe that. And if I can just be sort of selfish for a moment, the Resurrection Band concert last night was a really important moment for me. I don't know how many of you in the audience were there last night, but you guys just totally rocked. And it was just so awesome. But for me, it was just a reminder of how important Resurrection Band has been, but also lots of bands have been in my life. And last night I was sort of standing off to the side watching the crowd, and at every single Res song last night, you could tell there were many people in the audience that song meant something really, really important to them. You could just see it on their face. You could see it as they raised their hands. And I would love it if at Cornerstone we could have maybe a little bit better sense of communicating to a younger audience. Hey, here are the people that they're still relevant. You know, these people have gone before you, and they still matter, and here's why they matter. So anyway, sorry to be self-indulgent there. Thanks, John. It was great last night.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming and talking about Cornerstone. Long live Cornerstone.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Heron, Professor J. Robert Parks, John Thompson, and Doug Van Pelt, along with Tony Daddy LaFianza. Keep Cornerstone in your prayers. You just never know when you might incur the last one, and that certainly would be a travesty. Yes.